Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Leadership Project with your host Mick Spears. We bring you thought-provoking guests and topics every week to challenge your thinking about leadership. Our aim is to help you become the leader that you wish you always had as we learn together and lead together. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Leadership Project. I'm greatly honoured today to be joined by Peter Nankervis. Peter is the founder and managing partner and director of the Lighthouse Group, our business partner. Peter and I have done some work together over the last few months, and I can tell you that he is a formidable deliverer of workshops around leadership. He has an amazing gift, particularly around reframing, helping people to address things like their limiting beliefs and to start reframing the position that they're in so they can look forward at positive impact. Today, we're going to talk about the psychology of leadership and particularly something called a leadership system, which is something that you may not be familiar with in the audience. So I look forward to bringing you this wonderful interview with Pete today and to unpack both of those topics around psychology of leadership and leadership systems. So Pete, before we get deep into it, what I'd love you to do is give us a little bit of a flavour of your personal background and what drove you into the big bad world of leadership.
Hi Mick, great to be here. In terms of my background, I basically left uni, did a business law degree and then went into the corporate sector and worked my way up sort of into management roles and worked into an international business in a whole lot of different cultures and got fascinated about people and really sort of knew at that point in my 20s I was really interested in the development of people and organisations. The two things together were the sort of part that I was really fascinated by. So I went and did a master's in coaching psychology to sort of advance my sort of real depth of understanding and specialisation in that. And then from then on, I started consulting and worked for a large management consulting business and really started working with executive teams and executives. This was kind of, now 25 years ago now, and was fundamentally kind of observing the difference between businesses and teams that had good leaders and those that didn't. And I remember one example where I was working with the same business, and the New South Wales business and the Victorian business had the same amount of people, but the New South Wales business was twice as profitable as the Victorian business, and it came down to the leader, right? It was the leader that made the difference, and it was so stark for me that for a business to really succeed, it has to have great leadership. And at that point, it was very clear that I have to make this my line of work and calling of work because I can see how fundamentally important it is.
Yeah, okay. So I'm hearing three things there, Peter, if I can play it back to you and let me know what you think. So the first one is a desire to understand how people work, what makes them tick. Then the second one is a desire to help people. And then the third is this realization that it is leadership that is the major differentiator between a high-performance team and, let's say, a team that's either underperforming or just at the nominal average. Is that what I'm hearing there?
Yeah, it is. I mean, personally, I try and make things simple, clear and practical so that it's understandable. And the other area that just people don't understand or realise, I think that there's just so much evidence to show that leadership is so important. I mean, it's 38% of what makes up the difference in business performance. So it is the biggest lever you can pull if you're looking to improve your business performance. And not many organisations actually realise that. And then also, if you're making a transformation in your business, 7 out of 10 of those transformation efforts fail, and they fail because of leadership and culture. So there's so much, not only from a personal point of view, but evidence-based research that supports that leadership is just so critically important. And for me, what I try and do is break it down so that not only people can see that there's proven systems and methods that you can follow to get a great result, but how do you make it simple and practical for you so it becomes workable for you? Because I think the area of leadership is just is not well understood. It's quite grey, and it's, nobody knows how to define it. And, my mission is just to sort of uncomplicate it and really make it sort of simple and practical.
So there's lots of great empirical evidence there about the difference that leadership makes. But you did mention there is no one really standard definition of leadership. What is Peter Nankervis's definition of leadership?
Well, I think of it, again, I come back to the sort of combination between people and business. So, normally your role in a business as a leader is to take a team or the business from your current position to where you want to get it to, so from A to B. And the leadership aspect of that is how do you mobilise and engage the variety of stakeholders, your staff, your people, your customers, your peers, to go on that journey with you from where you are to where you need to get to. And so that the leadership to me is your ability to be able to make that journey practical, real, compelling, so that people can come on the journey with you.
All right, so there's some pretty key words there: mobilise, engage, practical, compelling. In all of that, where do you think we go wrong? Because you're telling us that 7 out of 10 transformations fail, that we see all-time low levels of engagement in the workplace today. Like when you read Gallup reports, there's a recent one where the numbers even got worse. So we're seeing a lot of businesses and teams out there where people are disengaged. We're seeing transformations fail at very high levels. Where do you think we've gone wrong in leadership, Pete?
What I observe is that often people think, or leaders think, senior leaders think the answer always lies somewhere else. And so if I'm the CFO, I'm looking down into my finance team, right? Or if I'm the sales team, I'm looking at the marketing team. Or if I'm the ops team, I'm looking at the sales team. We're constantly looking somewhere else for the problem. But, leadership is the mirror, right? It's the symptoms that you see in the business is a direct reflection of leadership. And so that's an awareness piece around people understanding that leadership is the cause often, or the reflection of whatever that you see as the result in the business. And secondly, it's, do you want to do something about that? Because if you want to grow your business, or you want to change the result of what you need to see around you, then that has an equal and opposite shift that needs to be made for you as the leader or your leaders. And it's the collective ability of that leadership to shift that will actually make the business shift. So I think it's awareness, I think it's responsibility, and I think where people have tried it in the past, typically leadership, they try one thing. They'll do a half-day workshop or an hour presentation on something and expect it to change. But change doesn't work like that. I mean, if, you and I know we both play a bit of tennis, right? If I go and have one hit of tennis and then I don't play again for the next 3 months, my tennis game's not going to get any better. I need to play regularly. I need to have some structure. I need to get some teaching and training with some new skills. I probably need a new racket. It's all of those things together that actually makes the change. So to think of leadership as a one thing once only is just the wrong way to think of it. Leadership is a process, and it's a process you learn over time through feedback and results, making mistakes, etc. And that's how but to my big point is leaders need structure, organisations need structure to be able to make that work.
We'll come to that structure shortly for sure. The three things I'm hearing there, Pete. The first one is a lack of self-awareness. So the starting with almost like a victim mindset of it's always someone else's fault instead of looking into the mirror like you said. So the self-awareness. The second one is the desire or drive that you want to do something different. Without that desire, nothing's going to change. And then the third one is, I'm going to say, persistence and resilience. That if you're going to work at your leadership, it's something you've got to work at every day, every week, every month. And it's not just try something once and it didn't work. You need to keep on trying, and you need to keep on learning and growing every day. So, Pete, we do see a lot of challenges out there in the world. Where do you see leaders being most challenged today, and why?
It depends a little bit about where the maturity level of the leader is and where the maturity level of the organisation is. And so at a lower level, often it's the transition from me to we, like I'm just focusing on myself, to now I need to enable others and I need to have a mindset of us as a team. And that's a big shift as junior leaders are coming up. I think as you get up to then around greater levels of trust and empowerment and changing your style to be able to enable that, and then as I talked about before, this sort of challenge of going from a functional leader to an enterprise leader is a real challenge. But from a senior leadership perspective, they're mostly challenged in the struggle between today and tomorrow. The realities of surviving today and solving the problems of everything that I'm caught up in the whirlwind of today versus what do we need to do to lead to tomorrow. And that is, because as I said, if no one in the executive leadership or senior leadership is leading to tomorrow, no one is leading to tomorrow, then you're stuck in today and you will not progress the organisation.
There's two things I'm picking up there. One is a mindset shift and one is a time shift, and they both go hand in hand. So the mindset shifts as I move from one role to the next role in the organisation. What is my role starts to shift. So moving from being an individual contributor where it was important about myself through to it's not about you anymore. It's actually about how you lead your team and the environment you create for your team. And then where does my time get spent? And in both cases, could be that junior leader who now is spending a good percentage of their time leading people, not just leading themselves, or through to what you said, this difference between today and tomorrow. Are we constantly in firefighting mode, or are we progressing the organisation through to the vision of what we have for the business for tomorrow? So yeah, mindset and time are the two things that come to my mind there, Pete. How does that sit with you?
No, I think that's definitely right. And then again, it's the reflection that there are certain things that you'll need to mature or develop for yourself to get a different result within your team. And so if you're trying to be the mate of your teammate and you're not speedy enough in your decision making because you're needing everyone to validate your decision, that's going to slow down the execution of your team. But it actually comes back to fundamentally you as a leader needing to change the way that you're thinking about the need for collaboration, the need for validation, the need for approval. So it's again a mindset and a behavioural shift. So both are required.
Really cool. All right. We all talk about the strive towards high performance teams. What does high performance look like to you, Pete?
My experience is that the best times for people in a career are when they're working in a high-performing team. You know, when they're really, it's the exhilaration that you feel when you're winning and when you are operating to a sort of an agreed set of standards and code of conduct that makes you feel proud of who you are as a team. And you'll look back in your career and you'll remember, you'll do anything for those people at that time, you know, even 15, 10, 20 years later. Your worst times of your career on the opposite is when you're in a team that is dysfunctional, that's poorly led, that is firefighting, that's sniping each other, that's got all of those. It's the worst. You hate going to work, right? So really good looks like this collective high performance achievement and the feeling that you get from that. But in reality, it's from an organisational point of view, did you exceed your accelerate your strategy to a level that is plus or minus 10% over 3 years? Are you in the 3 out of 10 rather than the 7 out of 10 transformation efforts that fail? Are you as an individual leader 80% effective or more as a leader? I mean, these are the sort of things that define what good looks like for leadership. And, you know, they're all very measurable things, and it's great to define where you're currently at and progress measure yourself moving forward so you know how you're shifting, positive or negative, and then you can do something about it.
Interesting thing there is the word feeling and the emotions were key in everything you said. It feels like a Maya Angelou quote on a meta level, right? So Maya Angelou, famous for saying that people may forget what you did, they may forget what you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And what I'm hearing from you is that, but in a team environment. So you'll always remember the bad teams that you're in, but you remember it for the wrong reason. You remember how awful it was and how you wanted to get out of there. And you remember the exhilaration was the word that you used of that high performance team. And then after you've captured that feeling, that emotion, then you might remember the things that you actually achieved.
And it's the journey, right? Like, because the CEO wants to have a high-performing leadership group where in 3 or 4 or 5 years' time, they all look back on the fabulous journey that they have taken collectively and enabled for everyone in the organisation. And there will be lots of struggles, but there's so much pride in being able to take a group of people on a journey from where you were to this better state in the future. And that is the feeling that's created if you can get one team working really well.
Now, with everything we've spoken about so far, Pete, clearly leadership is a key driver of business performance. Why is it not prioritised as much as it should be in businesses?
Well, I think I answered a little bit there, but it's mostly through a lack of understanding. Either people have tried it and not got an ROI or an outcome from it in the past because it's been tactical in terms of their investment, and so they perceive it to not have a big impact. It's like branding. When you think of branding, often people think, well, yeah, I know I need to improve our brand because it leads on to so many other things, but do I get an actual impact on my results from that in the next 3 months? It's going to take a bit longer, and it's going to require a lot of other things to be invested in to make that work. So I think those are the things that are part of it, but I think I would just say that people are setting it up to not succeed generally. And so through no poor intent, but just perhaps a lack of experience and understanding that there is some really good ways that generate clear results if you set it up properly.
Okay, so I think we are starting to get to some of that structure as well. You said something interesting before. You said tactical. Why do you think leadership is seen as a tactic rather than strategy? How do we lift it to a new level? Tell us more about that.
Well, the way I think about it is an organisation has a strategy, right? And then it's got all its people and all of the things that it needs to do. But whether it's brand or customer or process or financial, any of the levers that need to be pulled all come back through leaders. So there's this disconnect that sits between like where the organisation wants to be, but how does it get there? It gets there through people. And how does it get there through people? It gets filtered and expressed and desired and managed and orchestrated through leaders. And leadership is this missing piece in the middle. And I just don't think many people think of it like that, where it's the enabler. It is the enabler of your strategy. And, I think I often just see that in organisations, things are so disparate. There's the strategy that's talked about in one conversation. It's the culture that's talked about in another conversation. It's the change that's happening somewhere in the business, in one silo somewhere in the business. And then often, senior leaders are trying to drive results and execution. But it's the combination of those things that need to be integrated together that actually fundamentally makes the shift.
So what I'm hearing there is that the deep need for alignment to the strategy, clearly, and then you're saying that people and leadership is the connector that brings it together. So it's the one that allows people to connect what they're doing every day to the strategy. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing it in a certain way? And it's through leadership that you have an obligation, I'm going to say, I'll go as far as that, an obligation to help people to connect their daily work through to the strategy. Tell us more about your thoughts around this alignment, around this engagement. What tips have you got out there for leaders that might be listening to this going, oh yeah, this sounds like my business?
Well, people engage with what they create, and most of the time people are given things and expect to change or expected to follow a certain way. And when they're given something or told to do something or emailed something, that doesn't mean that they understand it. That doesn't mean that they accept it or have processed it or realise what that means for them. It doesn't mean that they understand how to translate that with others. So unless you actually allow people in a process to really connect to that and feel like that they are creating it, even if it's within a frame, obviously, and then really understanding what that means for them and how they translate it, it just won't work. And it just then, again, what do we communicate the strategy once and then put it away and it's sort of expected that everyone's going to kind of be on board and leading that actively? That's just not realistic. We are people that like change and doing different things in variety, and we need to be brought back to key things regularly and often, and to have a way of thinking about it and connecting with it regularly so that we then know how to translate it to others.
Yeah, some really powerful things there, Pete, and that repetition is coming again, that it's something you've got to work on every day. It's not a set and forget activity at all. It's something that you need to keep coming back to. The words that you used, people support what they create, so that involving them in the process. And earlier in the interview, you spoke about mobilise and engage, and what I'm picking up now is the word inspiring people into action, not telling them what to do, but inspiring them into action. And I'm going to say, Pete, and you might disagree, but let's have a chat about it. I'm going to say that we've had 2 or 3 decades where there was an alpha style leadership model of many leaders that were put on pedestals that were very directorial and were do as I say and do it this way and I'm the boss and don't question me. And what you're saying now is a leader that is much more holding space and allowing people to co-create with the leader where the organisation is going. Are you picking up a shift? Like clearly you believe in this world where you're inspiring people, you're mobilising, you're engaging them. But do you see a shift in the world away from alpha style directors through to inclusive leadership?
Oh, fundamentally, I think that shift from what we call push to pull, right? And everyone knows this intuitively in their own lives. The more you're pushing things or you're feeling like you're pushing things, you're getting resistance back from that. And whereas if you can pull people and you can influence and engage people towards something that's common and that they are actually feeling like they're taking ownership, then it becomes an empowered position, right? Rather than probably a disempowered position that often people feel like when it's a command command and control leader that's highly directive. And there's always a place for certain different leadership styles, but certainly if you're wanting to get people engaged with a change process, it's not the right way. They have to be included and they have to be part of a facilitated process that's inclusive, and they need good hosts as leaders to be able to encourage discussion. And leaders are not trained to do that typically. And so being able to ask great questions and facilitate discussion and put things in a frame and to be able to pull rather than push is something that they need to learn and unlearn around the previous ways of operating.
That unlearn is very powerful because there's a good chance most of the leaders that we see coming through today, a lot of them have had role models that were the opposite. So it does mean that there's a good chance that they might, without unlearning, they might start mimicking some of those behaviours. So it is a learned skill to be able to pull back and go, right, I'm going to hold space now. I'm going to engage the team. I'm going to get them to be part of the process, not just tell them what to do. One of the things that we do see, and you and I have chatted about this topic before, we do see the Great Resignation in the US, and the US is not the only place that happens. We do see things like quiet quitting, where people are pulling back. And quiet quitting is not just about work hours, by the way. It's about level of engagement. Are they fully engaged in what they're doing every day? Are they working with their heart and soul, or are they just doing the bare minimum? Where do you see the answer lies in all of this with what you're talking about with this mobilize and engage style and the relationship towards things like quiet quitting?
Well, picking up on your last question, I think there's a distinct shift from control to trust, right? And that is that's a dichotomy or sort of a continuum that both leaders and people are renegotiating at the moment post-COVID. And, I think people want a lot more flexibility than they previously may have enjoyed, which comes with it more trust from the leader and from the organisation to enable that, which on the other side, the leader's trying to probably drive more performance, so is kind of leaning into the control factor, which is kind of opposite and against the trust that is sort of more wanted, I guess, from empowered employees that feel like they should be trusted. So that's a really the difficult one. And I think then around that is conversations and decision making, and I think, just about every organisational survey I've ever seen, people want more communication. It's just natural. People want more communication. But when you're remote working and you're flat out and you've got a high workload and you're under-resourced, that is a symptom of things that can go wrong, where there's not enough communication and then not enough clarity around how decisions are made. And then that creates more disempowerment because, I thought you should, I thought that was my decision, or you should have involved me in that decision. So it's quite easy for then, stormy weather to occur in what was probably a well-operating team. And, and I think to be a high-performing team, which does require a level of kind of clear direction, it requires a clear environment for people to be able to express their values, and it requires some clarity around how communication and decision making is working so that you can drive towards results. But there's a hell of a lot of kind of enablement that needs to happen by the leader to make that happen. And I think, it's just got to come back to the start, is that position is being renegotiated. And what I would encourage all leaders to do is just err on the side of inclusivity and facilitated and involvement, because you can't go wrong if you ask good questions.
Very powerful. So we're really into the depth here of the psychology of what people are looking for in the workplace. And some key words that I heard in everything you just said there, Pete, were communication, clarity, inclusion, and involvement. And if that's just 4 things that leaders out there that are listening today, if you focus on those 4 things, you're well on your way to being a good leader. Let's build on that. And what else do you think people are looking for in the workplace, Pete, that the leaders that are listening to this show right now, what are some of the things that they could start working on immediately?
I think number one, you need to see leadership as a competitive advantage for your business in your market. And so great companies have that position. And if you see leadership and you recognise that leadership is or could be your competitive advantage, then that means that you need to engage and retain people better than your competitors. It means you need to engage and retain customers better than your competitors. So that means you as the leader need to be a multiplier of people. You need to be not diminishing lifting people around you. You need to be bringing people up, elevating them, promoting them, recognising them, trying to get the most out of every person that you work with. And I'm not saying that's easy, but that's part of the work of leadership. But that if I was to say two things, is just see leadership as a competitive advantage, work to engage and retain your people as hard as you can, and work to engage and retain your customers. Because if you do those things well, you'll be a good leader. You'll be at the 80% effectiveness just by doing those things or intending to try and do those things well.
That's great, Pete. And what I'm thinking here as I listen to you is that we do have a very strange workforce at the moment. There's a lot of strange dynamics out there. We've got people that are either disengaged from their current workplace. You've got other companies that are swearing all the time, we just can't find the right people, etc. But if we focus on leadership, we can turn this current adversity into an opportunity and attract and retain the best talent into your organisation. And then you can become the dominant force in your industry. If you're attracting and retaining the right talent, the best talent into your organisation because they believe in the organisation, they believe in the leadership, you're just going to go from strength to strength. And you use the term multiplier, you're then going to have those people on your team and you can multiply the effect by getting them all to work in unison together towards a common purpose, and you'll dominate the industry. And all it comes down to is focusing on your leadership. That's what I'm hearing there, Pete. You want to expand on that?
Totally, and you will see the result in your business. And the companies that I've seen grown tenfold over the last 20 years that I've been working with personally and that I've had the opportunity to work in with have achieved that through having that clarity of intent. And so I think, what I've observed, just distinguishing between, maybe bad leadership to good leadership to great leadership, if we can use that sort of general definition, the great leaders are ones that are not only good at leading themselves and good at leading people, but are great at leading the business. And what that really means is that they've been able to transition from being a functional leader of a department or a team where their approach is more vertical about their own silo and the performance of their silo. They're able to shift their mindset to the enterprise and be really an enterprise leader with not only the mindset of being an enterprise leader, thinking on behalf of the whole, because that's what the CEO wants you to do or think like, but also they have the capability to do that. They have the commercial acumen and the skills to be able to think strategically through the lens of the different lenses of the business to have that view. And I think that's the journey that I see a lot of companies trying to make with their leaders, is to try and go from this functional leader to enterprise leader. And I think there's still a big way for organisations to go to get there.
I like this term enterprise leader and these three dimensions of leadership that you're talking about, and the bad to good to great. Let's unpack that a little bit. And the call to action here for the audience right now is to give yourself an honest scorecard against what Peter's saying. So he's talking about leaders having three dimensions: leading self, leading others, and leading the business. And this leading the business is being able to understand all of the levers of the business. So if I push here, it's going to have an impact over here, and understanding how the entire enterprise works so you can make more effective decisions. And what Peter's saying is great leaders are able to balance all three of those dimensions. A good leader is probably going to be good at two of them, but not necessarily the third one. So there's your call to action. Have a think about it. Your own leadership style. Are you well balanced between leading yourself, leading others, and leading the business? And do you need to work on one of those dimensions to lift yourself from good leadership to great leadership and have that enterprise mindset that Peter's talking about? Now, Pete, one of the things with the Lighthouse Group that you specialise in is you have this term called leadership systems or systemising leadership. That was something that was brand new to me before you and I met. I'm still discovering my way around this. For the audience, what do you mean when you say systemise your leadership?
Well, firstly, if we think of systems in organisations, right, there's usually a sales system, marketing system, financial system, payroll system, logistics system, procurement system. We're familiar. There's systems, a lot of systems set up in organisations. So why are they set up? They're set up to organise, to make things efficient, make things consistent, give it some structure, to make it not person dependent, right? So it's beyond any one person. It can be followed and it can give some predictability to the outcome if you follow it. But also things are interdependent. And a great example for me is when you try and improve, if organisations wanting to improve its sales capability, for example, needs to improve its sales capability to generate better revenue. You can go and do some sales training, be really helpful. But when you get in there, you realise, Well, it needs to be, the structure's not quite right. Or what's their strategy? Is everyone clear on the value proposition from a sales point of view? Have they got measures? Is there a process? There's all these things that are interdependent in a system that need to be looked at for the actual result to occur. And so when you look at leadership, and it comes back to that tactical to strategic thing that I was talking about before, leadership needs to be designed as a system. It needs to have, if the executive leadership team are not aligned as one primary team of the business, then the rest of the organisation will be a reflection of the dysfunction that happens in the executive leadership team. If the extended leadership team are not leading their people and teams to a common direction set by the executive leadership team, they're going to be going down independent paths. Like I was talking about before, the marketing might be great, the sales might be terrible. The sales might be great, but the operations might be terrible. Unless those things are orchestrated together to being fixed together in an integrated way through leaders working on the same things together or common things together, then the organisation does not reach its next stage of development. It does not progress to the goals of the board, which might be to double enterprise value over the next 3 years or to achieve a certain profit target in X time frame. They will not progress to the next time. And then if we go down to the next level, the future leaders need to be ready to understand what is required to lead the business in its next phase. And so if you look at this whole organisation as a system, you can set up then a system for how the leadership should work so that it becomes a predictable thing you can invest in to get a result that you're looking to get. And that's just a very different sort of design to something that's got a much higher chance of being successful than a 1 hour workshop or a half-day workshop.
Yeah, it's really powerful, Pete. And I want to play back to you what I'm taking away, and please correct anything where I go on a tangent, but I want you to build upon this as well. So we've already discussed that businesses and teams rise and fall on the back of leadership. But if we leave that to chance, it comes down to the individual leader. And you might have pockets of great leadership across your business, and you'll have these little teams that are all happy and doing their best, but they can't be as impactful as they possibly can unless they're integrated into a system where that leadership is spreading around and is aligned and engaged. And if we want it to be repeatable, just like we do, like you said, with procurement or engineering or other departments, it needs to be systemized so that we're able to achieve that repeatability so that we don't just have pockets of great leadership here and there, but we have leadership as a system in the business. And we start looking at the impacts across, and we've all heard the term silos before, where these silos just break down and we have a leadership system that goes across between different departments of the organisation to take the entire organisation to a level of co-creation that's far beyond what the individual departments could do. And then what I heard, Pete, was then the layers. So it's no good having an amazing executive leadership team if the extended leadership team or the middle management, the senior management is a black hole, and then you've got people at the bottom that are trying their best, but there's a lack of connectivity, a lack of alignment between. So we need to look at the executive leadership team. Are they all aligned and playing on the same team in the same way? Is that then flowing down into an executive leadership team that have been engaged across everything that the leaders are doing? And then do we have the pipeline of next generation of leaders that are coming through that are going to continue to build that dream of what the organisation is trying to do? So I'm getting it. I'm seeing these interconnections between departments, between levels, and to get to this repeatability that leadership is a differentiator of the business that is systemized across the business, not just the realm of hero leaders in the business that are doing their best but are not connected together.
Because I think if you take a CEO's view, they'll look at most will recognise they don't have the leadership capability to deliver what they need to deliver in the future. Most say that. But when they look in the business, they'll probably notice they'll have a pain point in a department or a certain leader or a certain function that's not operating to the level that they think should be operated in at the kind of current level of the business now. So, but actually it becomes a bit complicated, and I think in most organisations, they don't know what should come first first, second, third, right? So that's where we help them, is we come in and give you a roadmap to say, well, here's the roadmap of actually how you evolve over the next 3 years. And this is what you need to do first, second, third. And this is how you can design it. So you're only doing one thing at a time fundamentally, but it's a sequenced thing so that there's this system that's built. So it's then fortitude, sort of giving this fortifying of the business for the sort of to be sustainable in the long term. And again, that's independent of any one person. It's a system then that can be then occupied. And that's why typically when you're a CEO and you have a successful period and you've worked and you've seen that you've done these things and you've been successful through some sort of system or roadmap, you want to replicate that at your next job. And that's why we get taken from organisation to the next one, because, I mean, the stakeholders around them see that they know what they're doing, but it's often guided by a very clear roadmap and system that's underpinning that journey.
So now we're lifting it up away from the hero leadership that I was talking about, where you might have individuals that are doing great, and we are getting to this repeatable, systemised approach. And then you mentioned the word roadmap, Pete. I'm going to hazard a guess and say there's going to be some people listening to this podcast right now that are probably going, oh yeah, systemising leadership. I want to know more about this. How does someone start? How do they start? If they want to go on a journey, and you mentioned the word roadmap, where does it start? What's the first step?
The best place to start, if you're not exactly clear on the one thing that you need to do, is to start doing an assessment and a diagnostic of your maturity level now as against where you're wanting to be. So we help organisations do that. We have a very clear process to be able to do that. But actually what you need is a roadmap, which then shows you the stages that you need to go on, which are typically over about 5 stages over 3 years. And you then know the stages that you're working on it. And there's a very clear sequence that we've been able to learn through years of doing it, that certain things have to happen first to then create things second, to create things third and fourth. So we show our customers not only what's in the roadmap, but also what defines the stages, so that you can get a sense then, okay, in the map of now where I'm at now as an organisation to where I'm trying to get, I can see the stepping stones that we need to take, and we can then invest in the right things next that's required to take us to the next stage. And it's a big point, because often coming back to a point of why leadership investment's often not successful is because people are investing in the wrong things in the wrong order.
All right, very good. So what I'm hearing is an analysis, an assessment of where are we today, the from position, a deep thought about where we want to get to, the to position, and then a realisation that you can't jump from 2 in one go. You're going to need to build your way up there. So that roadmap is all about steps that are all going to build upon each other. They're almost like preconditions of being able to achieve the next thing so that you can get to that 2 position. And then the old adage, going one step at a time. Okay, so we know where we are. We know where we want to go to. We know there's multiple steps to get there. And the best first step is this one, and then this one, and then this one, is what I'm hearing there, Pete.
Correct. And that's literally a quarter at a time, right? And again, it needs to be integrated, because the objective of what you need to achieve in the next step requires different mindsets, requires different behaviours, requires different skills, requires different processes for people to follow, requires different tools or common language for people to rally around to be able to. So that's where this sort of integrated sort of things that we know from our experience can kind of help then accelerate the journey, because that's really what most CEOs want. They want to be able to propel the transformation or the growth agenda or this change that they're trying to lead. They want to accelerate that quickly so that they can get to the result faster, because they're under pressure from a time point of view, and they know they're going to make mistakes and they're going to invest in the wrong things, or they're going to have consequences and implications from making poor decisions that could have been avoided if you followed a system. That's why, to me, the system is so important.
Let me share with you what I'm taking away from that and test my understanding. So one of the things that we see out there with the 70% of change efforts that fail, it's not through lack of trying. People are trying to do things, but they're churning. They're going from change effort to change effort to change effort. They're getting change weary, etc. What I'm hearing you say here, Pete, is that CEOs can accelerate a successful transformation by being more intentional, by focusing and going, right, what is putting the first thing first? What does that look like? what is the thing that we can do now? Instead of just going, all right, this month we're going to try sales training, and then next month we're going to do a program around psychological safety, and then the month after that, like, it's just a bit hit and miss. What I'm hearing from you is a very intentional roadmap that is designed to go one step at a time and to evolve the business. And by doing it so deliberately, intentionally, you're actually going to go there faster instead of running around with like you got your head cut off. How does that sit with you?
Look, I'm biased, Mick, but I think that's why, I think they do need a partner, because it needs sometimes an external view to see the forest from the trees. And, I think most organisations and most CEOs are coming to a struggling situation often. They come into a business and there's almost all these pain points that need to be solved today. And if they're not working on the future of the business or where they want the business to be and executing and delivering and communicating, engaging, aligning, all of the things that they need to be doing, then who is taking the business to where it needs to be in the future? No one. So that's the structure that kind of needs to be held by a partner for sometimes the organisation or the executive leadership team particularly, so that it provides this railway track for the team and the organisation to go on, so it can kind of go from this station to the next station to the next station in a reasonably direct route by not making a heap of mistakes. But that requires a roadmap, some structure and some objectivity and some accountability being held into the system, which is why I advocate, I guess, for organisations to have a partner like someone like us.
There's a few things I'm hearing there, Pete. One is that you can't see the forest for the trees. So if you're too close to it, you're going to miss things, right? You're also emotionally invested. If you're the CEO, you're very emotionally invested in what you're doing. And having that objective third party alongside with you for the journey, they might be able to tell you some things that your team don't necessarily feel comfortable to tell you. They might be able to help you with blind spots of things in your own personal leadership, not just the roadmap now. It might be the CEO's own personal leadership. They might need some help having that mirror held up to them, and that's what a partner can do. And then I'm going to say the word accountability. It's almost like an accountability buddy, that if I'm the CEO and I'm trying to do a transformation, that, yeah, I've got my board I need to report to. That's a given. But now I've got this person that I trust sitting next to me, advising me, and I can bounce ideas off in a psychologically safe environment and get guidance and advice from someone that's been there before. How does that sit with you, Pete?
We all need trusted advisors, and we have them in finance, we have them in marketing, we have them in legal, in most areas. But who is the specialist in your business in organisational development? Your HR leader's not. Your strategy head might be quite good at that, but probably don't have all of the people aspects and the leadership aspects to that. Your COO might have a natural inclination to the structure that's kind of needs to be put in place, but not the design of the roadmap or the whole people engagement and change management piece that needs to go around that. So that's the partnership that I think often is missing for CEOs particularly. And they might think that they've got that knowledge themselves. And, look, there's some great, if you've been in a startup, scale-up business before and you've taken it from X to Y, you've got some great learnings. But if you then go into a business that's now 300 people and you're trying to get it to 3,000, or you're on that journey, it's a very different kind of journey that you're on, as opposed to then a much larger enterprise where you've got massive amounts of sites all around the country and people that are really geographically diverse. It's again very difficult to kind of mobilise that change through your frontline leaders. So the situations and the contexts, are widely different, but the things in the roadmap become quite salient according to where your business is at now and where it's trying to get to next. And that's the science, and that's I talk about the psychology of leadership, because it's again the sort of science and the system behind, well, how do you put some structure to that so that you can accelerate?
This has been a great discussion, Pete, and I'd like to summarise a few things that I've taken away from today for sure. And the first one is, leadership, we know it is the difference. It's the difference between high-performance teams and also RANs, average teams or even below average teams. So we know leadership is that discriminator, but if you want it to be a discriminator for your business, you need to systemise leadership to make it repeatable, to get it across silos and to get it at every level of your business. business. Then you need a roadmap. You need to understand where you are today and where you want to go to. And the best way to get there is one deliberate, intentional step at a time. And Pete was saying, do one thing per quarter, but make sure that is a intentional and a deliberate thing that is moving you towards the direction that you're going towards. Not just some dream that someone said, oh, you know what, we really should do this. No, it needs to be on the roadmap so that it's moving you towards that direction. And then the final one is get a partner. Get a trusted advisor that's going to stand by you and hold that mirror up against you and to help you be that sounding board, to help you to stay on track towards what you just committed to. You just committed to from positioned in your to position and your roadmap. Your trusted advisor can help you along the way. You can have conversations with that trusted advisor that you might not feel comfortable having with your board or with your team. You can use it as a sandbox. You can use it as whatever you want to call it to then create the journey that you want to take your organisation go along. How does that summary sit with you? Anything that I missed or anything you would add that's important?
No, I think people might think, well, but what about me? I'm an individual leader. You know, you still need a system. I mean, if you're going from X role to another role, your role structure needs to change. The time investment needs to change. Where your skills are at and compared to your previous role needs to change. You know, where are you spending 80% of your time to get, you know, the biggest impact and result from your time? It's that, again, be really intentional in your design of your role so you set yourself up for success in your role. And in people, when they're changing roles, don't spend enough time on that. And I think particularly I would encourage, you know, individuals to think about that, to think about then how they orchestrate their team system and how that aligns to the organisational system of what we're trying to create. Because that alignment between individual, team and organisational is what great organisations do really well.
Brilliant, Pete. That's a great add there as well. All right, so I'm going to bring us to our final round. This is our rapid round. These are the same 4 questions that we ask all of our audience, Pete. So deadly curious to know your answer to these questions. What's the one thing you know now that you wish you knew when you were 20?
I think where you focus, you get results. You know, I've just seen that. And, you know, so understanding the key things and really simplifying things to where is it that you need to put your energy and focus to create the greatest impact for your life and for your stakeholders and people around you. That's key.
Yeah. All right. Love it. What's your favourite book?
Oh, I'm a massive reader. I've at any point in time got a business book, personal development book and a novel going at the same time. I've always loved books that create clarity. Like I think Marcus Buckingham does that well. Jim Collins does that well. But what I just really got me was Frederick Laloux's Reinventing Organisations. It's all about empowerment, setting up systems to empower people, which is obviously what I really believe in.
Nicely aligned to today's discussion, but also what you do every day, Pete. So yeah, well done. What's your favourite quote?
I mean, what I live by is people engage with what they create. And, you know, second to that, be the change that you want to be, that you want to create in others, because it starts, that everything outside starts inside. I can truly believe that. And that's my own learnt experience.
Yeah, nice one. And finally, and this is really important, there's going to be people in the audience that have listened to today's episode and they're either curious about your thoughts on the psychology of leadership, but I think most importantly, they're going to be curious about this concept of systemizing leadership. How do people get in contact with you, Peter Nankervis, and the Lighthouse Group if they would like to know more about this?
Well, you can check out our website at lighthousegroup.co. You can email me directly at peter@lighthousegroup.co. And I mean, I think if you are, you know, a C-suite or senior executive or CEO that's new into your role and you are looking to make a change or a transformation and you realise and you understand that leadership is a key lever, because that's really important. Not all senior leaders do. But if you are humble enough to recognise that is the case, then the best thing to do is have a conversation with us, because we can then start to show you and talk to you about the kind of roadmap that you should be thinking about and starting to socialise with your board, which will then obviously something that we can then actually build for you in a sequence so that we can, you know, become a partner that helps you accelerate and be really confident in your own success and those around you.
Yeah, wonderful, Pete. Thank you so much for your insights today. We pride ourselves on this show for challenging people's thinking about what all this means, and you've taken that to a new level today. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your insights and your experience.
Mick, great. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you for listening to The Leadership Project at mixbeers.com. A huge call out to Faris Sadek for his video editing of all of our video content, and to all of the team at TLP.
Joanne Goes On, Gerald Calabo, and my amazing wife, Say Spears. I could not do this show without you. Don't forget to subscribe to the Leadership Project YouTube channel where we bring you interesting videos each and every week. And you can follow us on social, particularly on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Now, in the meantime, please do take care, look out for each other, and join us on this journey as we learn together and lead together.